themselves.
Yeah.
They thrive on being individuals, but they don't know how to be individuals within a community. I think if there's one thing that I've always noticed is that the church will be church on its side, but they don't know how to church with youth. Youth has to have church on its own.
Yes.
I think we've had this conversation before. Parents are scared of their children. Like they're scared
I just
to...
don't get it. I just don't get it.
But what are you doing as a parent to, are you nurturing that yearning for a child to seek God and be like have a relationship with God?
Use a belt.
Just even lifting your hands is a form of worship.
Yes.
How you interact with God in that moment is a form of worship. And if parents cannot allow their kids to use every inch of their body and dedicate it, your mental health can affect your physical health, right? So if I'm not okay spiritually, if I'm not okay mentally, how is my body supposed to be okay? And I think the one thing that I always applaud youth pastors is you work with so many different children and different personalities, different backgrounds. And for you to be able to service every one of them in the way that makes sense to them and it attends to their needs. I think that's something people take lightly. Creating conversations between ministers, the church, and youth. Because youth have their needs, and it makes sense to them.
Yes.
The church has their needs, and it makes sense to them.
Like, what do you do?
Do I stay balanced?
What steps?
That's the question you should probably ask. Are you balanced?
Do you actually stay balanced? Yes.
So I think if one thing we can really invest in as the faith community is being aware of where my strengths are and where I lack and what can hold up where the lack is. Yeah, that's what's making me a little bit like
yeah, that's the whole idea of a conversation.
It's not a conversation.
Conversation with questions. When we start, we just have a conversation, casual. Yeah. I'm not taking you into casualty.
You are.
Oh my goodness.
You are.
Look at you.
Goodness. I got anxiety.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm good.
That's perfect. Right. So it looks like we're on.
Alrighty.
Welcome. Quiet Conversations. L. Jackson Pasteur. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Got my girl.
I'm waiting for the introduction.
Yeah, Vele, I'm gonna say it. Okay. Oarabetse.
Okay.
Morokane. You know what I'm saying? Affectionately known as OBee. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. How you doing?
I'm alright. I'm alive. I'm doing good.
Yeah.
To believe.
Now with this one, if you're not gonna speak loud, you need to put your mic closer.
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 I'll try my best.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I'll try my best. Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
So OBee, like you've been you're a youth pastor, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. What actually got you into ministry? Into youth ministry. Especially.
So initially I started off as a Sunday school teacher.
Oh yeah.
It's always been my passion. My grandfather is the one that initiated the whole concept of moving from Sunday school to children ministry. So I think that just planted a foundation for us. And then thereafter, my dad just made us, he made sure that we firm in that foundation, like faith formation as CM kids. So I think that's where it started. I started off as a children ministry practitioner, as they now call it. And when I went to study, my initial thing was to do psychology. I was straight up, I was like, psychology it is. But when I got there, things changed. You know, when you get there, you see different options. And I was like, oh, you could do this. So I later then went into theology and then majored in psychology. And that's how we got here.
Okay, so tell me, so your granddad as well, was he a minister?
Oh, yes, he was.
Oh, so like it's coming from...
Yeah, it's generational.
It's still coming.
It's generational, but no.
And then why are you running away?
No, I'm not. I think the collar's not for me.
Or the cape is for you.
I think I am more preferring on the collar than the cape.
For real?
Yeah, no.
Why though?
I think in as much as we don't want to acknowledge it, what keeps a minister standing like from day-to-day basis is their backbone, which is in most cases their wives. And people don't really see that because it's behind the scenes. But if you speak to a minister and you have those conversations about what really keeps you going, who's praying for you when you are busy attending to everybody else, and that's the wife.
Because church people don't pray for ministers.
They're just waiting for your prayers to come to them. But so it's a cornerstone for. So it takes a lot. You have to be a parent, and in some cases play both roles because the husband is attending to. So you're expected to attend to the kids and to the ministry. So it's dual responsibility. So I think it puts a lot of pressure.
So you'd rather your husband wears the cape?
Yeah, no.
And become Superman.
Not to put it like but yeah, no, I'd rather that. I'd rather that, honestly, because I think that we downplay what comes with being, that cape is very heavy. Yeah, it's heavy.
And since like you started with youth ministry, like what has been what challenges have you faced, and how have you how has your journey been?
I think I'm fortunate that I've experienced youth ministry in different contexts.
Okay.
Right. And surely there are challenges. I think every context has its own challenges.
Yeah.
But I think my biggest thing is the lack of understanding on what actually faith formation stands for. It's seen as just, it's Sunday school and then it stops there. It's not lifelong learning. So it takes away from the whole experience of I'm in church and I'm becoming part of the church. And I'm seeing where I fit in. I'm learning how my ministry or where my ministry is as a child growing up. So I don't think the church really puts emphasis on that. And to some extent, I don't think they acknowledge it. It's often put aside and they'll rather get somebody else to do it than do it themselves. So I think that's my biggest challenge, for them to understand and actually understand that is an experience. It's an encounter that both the children and the parents have to take part in.
Which is why they say, you're playing with the kids.
Yeah, you're taking care of the kids. It's just like
you're out there
you
playing
keep
games
busy,
with them,
keep them busy.
Yeah.
They can't even wait for church to open when it's school holidays because the kids need to keep going. So I think that's my biggest challenge. Okay,
and then since you're doing psychology, majoring in psychology, some time ago, I did ask you a question, and I asked you, I was like, what you passionate about? And you told me that you're passionate about holistic wellness. What is holistic wellness?
Okay, when we speak of holistic wellness, it encompasses the entire person, the entire being. In most cases, when you speak from a psychological perspective, you just look at the mind. But when you start involving the holistic approach, it looks at the mind, the body, the soul. It tends to the psyche of the person as a whole. So my thing was, I love psychology. I'm all about psychology, but it does not attend to the spiritual needs of a person. And we can't ignore that as human beings, we're spiritual beings. So one cannot be fulfilled if that area of their life is not attended to. So, yeah.
Okay. And then what does holistic wellness mean to you, and why is it important, especially like in youth ministry?
Okay, let me actually tell you a story.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So I grew up being a very sick child.
Okay.
I was very sick physically, and it took a long time for my parents to understand what kind of child I am.
Yeah.
Just a very sick child. You don't know what to do with them. So I started going to psychologists, just to see where do we need help. But there was that longing for me that I hear what you're saying, and I'm very aware, I'm conscious of what happens in my mind.
Yeah.
But there's a longing that I don't find here. And it came to me that when I started studying psychology is that there's no room for spiritual conversations within that area or that field.
Okay.
It's ethically not right for you to speak about, because people that you meet are of different religions. So, they try to build that gap by saying, let's not even include it. So I needed that for myself. And I saw, as a young person, I couldn't find that. And I couldn't for myself articulate my needs. But I knew there's this longing that I need. And later on, when I started studying, that's when I realized there is room for psychology and religion, or theology rather, to be one conversation, and that alone just gives you the idea that when we speak of holistic wellness, we're trying to attend to the entire being.
Okay.
Are you okay physically? I can see that, sure. Are you okay mentally? We can attend to that. Are you okay spiritually? Where do we meet you as an individual?
Okay.
So when we look at holistic wellness, we look at the growth of the person in all the different aspects and areas of their life. Okay. So yeah, for me, that's what it is. The entire, it encompasses all of a person.
And looking at it from a spiritual well-being perspective, how does it align with discipleship?
I think if you speak to a lot of ministers, and it's something that I don't think they've come to terms with. But for you to be able to be a disciple, you need to be okay yourself. All right. You need to be a glass that is full. Right. And most of the time, they're always giving. They're not able to fill in for themselves. Nobody's going to do that. The congregation is always needing, but never ready to fill the jar of the other individual. So when we really try to understand how those can go hand in hand is, as a person who is working towards attending to others, how am I being attended to? How am I conscious of where I am emotionally, mentally, spiritually? And in most cases, it's neglected.
But don't you think maybe that the question that comes in their mind is, because remember now, with a lot of the ministers, they have to go seek help somewhere else, and they have to pay for it. And doesn't the idea come to their mind of maybe saying, why should I go pay for something that I give for free? So wouldn't that be maybe the issue?
I think that could be part of the issue, but like they say, every psychologist needs to see a psychologist.
Yes.
And I think everybody needs somebody that they can unload on. And in most cases, like I said, it goes to the minister's wife. But sometimes you need somebody that does not have, or is not biased. Because if you're my partner, I'm going to support you. I'm going to agree with whatever it is that you say. I'm going to try to be on your side. But you need somebody who's not biased and is not affiliated in any way. And I think that's one thing we need to, as the Methodist Church, to recognize the need within our ministers. It's easier to complain, oh, this minister cannot do this, but are we giving him the resources to work to their best and full potential? Because if somebody is lacking emotionally and mentally, and in most cases, it's like, I can give this, so why can't I give it to myself? So they'll try to attend to themselves. But generally, sometimes you need somebody who's going to give you an unbiased outlook and help you navigate whatever it is that you're encountering. So I think it's one of those things that it's like, we could say it's a gap that we need to at least look at in our ministry.
And then when you're looking at it from the Methodist Church, because we both are in the Methodist Church, when you're looking at it from there and looking at your experience in the church, within the church, and your experience with your father being a minister as well, bishop now, I'm saying, just putting it out there,
Just saying.
So just looking at the experiences that you've kind of like encountered, do you think there are specific programs or approaches that can work well, especially in speaking about mental health within the church?
I think there are. I think there's a great room for us to look into as a way to make sure that our ministers are taken care of. I've had this conversation with my dad. I don't know if it will be all right me sharing this, but I've had it because I felt it myself. When ministers are moved, as you would see in the Methodist Church, when ministers are moved, most of the time they're not able to move with their entire family, right? And they experience loneliness. And sometimes it's a Sunday, you'd like to sit and chat with your family, but that's not there. And you don't want to go into somebody, because I like growing up, I wouldn't like it when people would come when it's family time. And Sunday is somehow family time, For me to say, okay, I'm going to go visit this other family, I'm infringing on that time. I'm taking away their family time. So I think, how do we then try to assist them in those times, like for them to navigate or practice holistic spirituality in a way that I'm taking care of myself in this way. But there's actually room for that. They would say there are resources, but they're not necessarily spoken about. I think there's some sort of prejudice as to as ministers, should we do that? Because we'd like to believe that the Holy Spirit or God should be able to attend to our spiritual needs. But sometimes, generally, there are people that are called to do so. Just like you're called to minister, there are people that are called to look after other people's emotions. So how do we then see to that in the ministry? But I think there is a great platform for that to be established.
And do you think there is a great platform as well for young people within the church to go through that? Because what we've noticed is that you would see with the elders, it's still kind of like a taboo, to bring the issues of mental health. But now with the young people, they kind of need a space like that as well. So do you think there is specific programs that we could, or resources that we could use? Or
I think there are. There are resources, and I think bridging that gap between the youth and the elderly people, I think in their times they grew like, you don't have mental issues, you just need to toughen up, that was the expectation from their side. But now we're dealing with a more woke generation, so the conversation is very much needed. And I think as a church, we're scared of uncomfortable conversations. Nobody wants to be vulnerable. Everybody has to be strong because that's expected of you. But I think we need to start making sure, or emphasizing, that being vulnerable is not being weak. Those are the conversations that we need to have within the church. But they're very much neglected. Like, if I have a seminar and I'm like, we're going to talk about mental health, very few people are going to attend. If I have, very few people. But when you really look at it, there are a lot of people, especially in the youth, that are dealing with mental health issues and are struggling to navigate life. And I think bringing that knowledge and wisdom from the older generation and having those conversations. How did you navigate life in your times? Or this is what I'm struggling with. Those conversations really help, even though the contexts have changed.
Yes.
But to just hear how one can overcome such. Like, narratives are a way of understanding and making meaning of whatever it is that one experiences. And if we're able to share that, if I'm able to say, Alvis, I can come to you and you share your narrative, I think that's how people connect. But if we don't create a platform for the older generation to sit with the younger generation and say, oh, this is how I do it, not, oh, how, this is how I used to do it, but like, as a way of, I'm interested in knowing how. I'm not just telling you how it's supposed to do, but I'm interested in knowing how you guys did it. But like, since times have changed, maybe we can change. It's things that have to be spoken about, but we often shy away from that because, I don't know, mental health for other people is just a no-go.
I guess so, and there's that whole thing of where we've forgotten about the. There's this saying, indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili, and we've actually kind of moved away from that. So now, how do you incorporate teaching about mental health and emotional resilience into the ministry, into youth ministry, into the church? How do you think we could incorporate that?
I think when we look at that, I think if there's one thing that the older generation got right was a sense of community. And currently we're living in an era where people are more to themselves. They thrive on being individuals, but they don't know how to be individuals within a community. And what I often notice is the older generation keeps their community, but they also don't know how to make community with youth. Right? I think if there's one thing that I've always noticed is that the church will be church on its side, but they don't know how to church with youth. Youth has to have church on its own. Like, we have different types of churches.
The Mickey Mouse.
Alvis can go play with the youth and do church their way, but they don't know how to come together and church together. And I think that's where we are missing the point. Creating that environment where I don't need to look for another person to be church with the kids. I can church with the kids. It's always, and I think even when they get that person, so they're able to fully focus on themselves and not engage with the kids. And I think, like I said, it takes away from the whole concept of faith formation and lifelong learning. If we look at our youth right now, there's this whole thing of when they get to young adults, they leave the church. And like I said, faith formation is an experience. If I came to church when I was young and I knew, I have to do youth, and that's the side where youth happens, right? And when you're older, you have to do, church, main church. But there's no way they facilitate that change. Therefore, they're going to leave, because when I was young, I didn't get a sense that I can be here when I'm this age. So therefore, I'm going to leave until I'm older, and then I'll come back and do church like older people do. And that's what we're missing. And if there's one thing that I stand firm on, is trying to make parents sit with their children. I think we've had this conversation before. Parents are scared of their children. Like, they're scared to...
I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
They'd rather have Elvis do it. We have memory verses. I don't think parents sit down and have those conversations.
Not anymore.
I've experienced it in my household. There was a time my little sister is very inquisitive, right? And she'd come and ask very uncomfortable conversations. But parents sometimes are scared to say, I actually don't know. Let's go find out. That's what I do. If I don't know, let's go find out. Like, that's homework.
And now it's even better because we have internet in our pockets,
exactly.
in our hands. And
they have the resources, but they're scared to use them. So because Elvis is there, Elvis will do it. And what I always try to do is to have the parents interested, and have the kids nag their parents. about their faith journey.
Yes.
Look at confirmation. You have a parent coming to you and saying, no, I want my child to join. But they also don't understand what confirmation is all about and why that there's a need for your child to join. If I speak to the child and the child is like, oh, no, not now. They have their reasons. And that's an opportunity for the parent to go home with the child and say, why do you not want to do confirmation now? Where are you spiritually? They don't know where their kids are spiritually. And that's the thing, like we need to start enforcing that in kids. Like go to your parent and nag them about where you are spiritually and ask them about themselves. Because parents often forget that the reason their kids come to church is because they come to church. And if they don't do church in a way that is encompassing to what ministry is about, then their kids are not going to do that, because they're modeling how to be a Christian, how to partake in the faith community. And if I don't see that being modeled, I have no reason to do it. I don't have a good reference of what doing ministry and being a part of a faith community looks like. And therefore, like
for me, when they approach me, normally it's after they've seen their kids, some other kids doing testimonies on the pulpit, and they're like, oh, wow, I would love my child to do something like that.
But what are you doing as a parent to, are you nurturing that yearning for a child to seek God and be like have a relationship with God?
Use a belt. It works. I'm just kidding.
Maybe not. I don't think it's safe to say that out loud, but yeah.
I feel like it is safe. It's part of the Bible, so we need to say these things. Eh? So when you look at, just to take a detour a bit, when you're looking at physical health, right, and activity, how do you connect that to spiritual growth in the lives of just people?
So it goes back to
a holistic approach.
How we understand worship, right? If my understanding of worship is to go to church and sing a song, then I don't see the necessity for activities and physical participation into this whole holistic wellness. I don't see it. But the second you start seeing worship as I dedicate all of my being to God, and I'm asking God to use and work through whatever it is that I am. In fact, just even lifting your hands is a form of worship. How you interact with God in that moment is a form of worship. And if parents cannot allow their kids to use every inch of their body and dedicate it, God, there's this thing of God, use me, send me, but it takes the entire being. If you look at the Psalms, they have a way. If you raise your hands, that it means something. If you fold, it means that you pray. All of those things, people are not aware of that. How do I give my entire being, like even my physical, because we always just think of, if we're thinking spirituality, it just means the soul and the spirit. But how does that affect my body?
That's the thing.
In psychology, they call it, now I forgot. But it basically
Don't worry. We're recording in the night, so the data just
no. It has, but it basically speaks to how your mental health can affect your physical health, right? So if I'm not okay spiritually, if I'm not okay mentally, how is my body supposed to be okay? So if I'm not worshiping God properly, emotionally, spiritually, how is my body supposed to do that? How is my body in worship and in awe of who God is? It's not only going to happen on a Sunday. During the week, how do I, as a person, physically, how do I worship? What is my worship? What does worship look like? And these are the conversations that are needed, not only with the youth, but for parents as well, everyone, so that they're able to say, be cautious of how you do this, because that's a sign of worship. Because we're able to see quickly when you don't lift up that finger because it means this. But how does then worship, or how is it noticed? How do I try to articulate through my body? How do I express worship with my body? for instance, when I'm like in worship, say for instance it's praise and worship, I feel the necessity to include my body. There's certain motions, there's certain like ways that you position, there's a posture that you hold, spiritually and physically. So how aware are we of that? Like, are we taking that into our consciousness and saying, I'm not just singing, but Lord, my body, what's the experience like for myself? And it goes into simple things like activities, seeing kids jump around and saying, oh my goodness, this is a way of seeing that this person is experiencing joy. You're able to say, okay, that person is happy. When they're jumping around and lifting their hands, that alone. And when you come into a church and we're just there, we're not, that's not holistic wellness. That's, we're not holistically there. So it's just the mind or whatever, but is your body present?
So it could be like sorry to interject.
No worries.
It could be like when you wake up in the morning and you don't do your bed, or you wake up and you're like, I don't want to wake up, I just want to type of thing. So when you're feeling like that, it already shows that there is something wrong physically, mentally, physically, spiritually as well. Okay, I get where you're going with this one. Now, how can maybe youth pastors model holistic wellness for young people that they lead, or even for ministers as well? How can they model holistic wellness for the people in the congregation?
I think by introducing awareness in a way that when a child is a child, there are certain expectations for a child.
Yes.
When you come into adolescence and young adulthood, there are certain expectations. But sometimes when a person is not able to meet those expectations, how do we then try to facilitate that or help them and nurture that and foster that with them? Sometimes you generally need to see them do it. But if there's one thing that I would say is important is observation. If you're able to observe and see, Elvis is a little bit back on this one. They do themselves when it comes to this specific thing. And I think the one thing that I always applaud youth pastors is you work with so many different children and different personalities, different backgrounds, and for you to be able to service every one of them in the way that makes sense to them, and it attends to their needs. I think that's something people take lightly, and I think that's one thing. I always say I wish all ministers started with youth ministry.
I always say that as well. Then they'll be able to actually just understand people from a certain age and understand the whole concept of a family as well.
Exactly. Because when they're dealing with adults, it's consistent. But when you're dealing with young people, it's facilitating that entire change until they're able to say, you know what, I can hold my cross for myself. I don't need somebody to, So making them aware that we're not just babysitting. This is an entire process, and there's no break when it comes to faith formation.
Facts.
It's the different stages. You know how we'd say, oh, this one must be with that. It's the different stages that we need to be aware of. And are we even aware, apart from all the, like saying this child is 13, therefore they need to be, are we aware of the different context the children come from? How am I able to attend to that as just one person, attend to all these kids within their special needs and but for other people it doesn't make sense. And with adults as well, I don't think faith formation stops. It's a constant thing, and it would be beautiful to see us all engage as a church, not this whole thing of youth ministry and then there's church. Ministry is ministry. Whether we try to separate it and put it into subtitles. Ministry is ministry. And the second we start understanding we need to do ministry together, it makes sense for everybody. It makes sense for the kids. It makes sense for the adults.
True that.
So yeah, I think youth pastors really have like a big challenge in facilitating conversations between ministers, the church, and youth. Because youth have their needs, and it makes sense to them.
Yes.
The church has their needs, and it makes sense to them. But do they know why these people need that? Do the kids understand why adults need that? But you are left to deal with that.
Yeah.
The minister is for the pulpit and not for the beanbags.
I've even had parents come and ask me how to take care of their children. I'm like, but you gave birth to that person.
Yeah. It's actually, like I said, parents are scared to look after they're scared of their children. They're scared to be with their children. It's just like
scary how scared they are.
Yeah. They're expecting Elvis to do that. So it's just for them it's like we are that gap or that bridge to their kids. But for me, if I were a parent, I would assume that if there is a gap, what is that gap? I'm not going to wait for Elvis. I should be going to Elvis with the understanding that Elvis, this is my child and this is how my child is. Please be aware of that, But no, they'll come ask you, how's my child? I had one parent, she came to me and she was like, I want my son to be part of the ministry, but this is who my child is. And I appreciated that so much because it shows that this parent is involved. And that's what we need. I think youth ministry as a whole is youth ministry because of involved parents. Because if I don't bring my kids, there's no youth ministry.
True that, yeah.
So if I'm not aware of my participation, my contribution, and my responsibility to my child's faith formation, then it takes away from their actual growth. Are they able to grow? Because they only grow on Sunday. Who takes care of them on Monday, Tuesday, during the week? They'll come ask you.
They expect the school to take care of them as well during the week.
Exactly.
Yeah. But now, for you, how do you personally stay balanced while serving others? Like, what do you do?
Do I stay balanced?
What steps?
That's the question you should probably ask. Are you balanced?
Do you actually stay balanced?
I think I've come to understand why we need to rest.
Ooh, yeah.
I think we've had this conversation. I've always told you that I don't know how to shut my brain. Like I'm constantly thinking. Even on my day off, I'll think, oh no, this child, I need to check up and see. But I need to have that boundary that this is my space. How do I attend to myself? How do I practice self-care, as they would call it these days? How do I attend to myself? And I think it just goes off with understanding yourself.
Yeah.
I know I'm an introvert, but I'm forced to be extroverted because I work with people.
Yeah.
Therefore, when it's Friday and it's my day off, I shut down.
Yeah.
I come to myself and I'm alone. I take that time for myself. I do activities that are for myself and that I love, because all this time you're attending to what other people love and making them comfortable.
Yeah.
So I look for myself and understand who I am, what I enjoy, and I invest in those things. One thing I love doing is reading.
Wow,
One thing I love doing is being in bed,
Yeah.
Like when you see me knock off on Thursday, best believe you'll see me again on a Saturday morning, because that day off is a day off. I think I've come to realize it's necessary, because when you start working with ministry, the thing about ministry doesn't have boundaries.
That's true.
And if you don't put those boundaries, then
you will never get anything
you're
right.
going to have a burnout. You're generally going to have a burnout. You need to be, people say in ministry you can't say no. Well,
you can.
I'm going to say no. I need to learn how to say no. I need to learn how to not only be able to advocate for other people, but to advocate for myself and say, oh no, sorry, I can't do that. But can you change that for Monday? That's when I'm in the office again. You need to be able to compassionately let people know these are my boundaries, please respect them, because I also respect them. The second I don't respect my own boundaries, I'm allowing people to, overstep. So it's taking those things like building boundaries and respecting your own time, saying, I love to help, but this is the day where I help myself. Are we able to do that tomorrow? Like, learning how to say no in a very polite manner. And I'm not even saying no, I'm saying I can do that, but not today, because this is my day off.
True.
So yeah, I think practicing self-care, and self-care looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
If you like putting a mask on, that's what you have to do. Like, it looks different for everybody, but coming to understand yourself and what puts you at ease, what settles your soul, then do that. I know if you wake up and then you listen to music.
Yeah.
I know I'd like it quiet. It goes
How did you know?
Because you've woken us up okay with music, so I've come to notice, that's how you wake up. But yeah, it's those little things of, I know myself, I understand myself, and therefore I can attend to myself. And building relationships, I think, like I said, in a world where we're so concerned with ourselves, we need to always know that there's a community for us to reach out to. True. Like, there are times when I know I can't pray for myself.
Yeah.
Who's that person that can intercede for me? Having that person. It's important that in your circle, you're able to hold one another. If I'm falling short here, I know Elvis can hold my hand. So yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Having a accountability partner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's necessary.
It's very necessary. Look at the friends that you're around. Are they praying for you, or are they praying? No. Are they praying for you, or are they praying for you?
Yeah. And then also need to pray with you. Yeah.
And then what role does the faith community play in supporting the efforts of pursuing holistic wellness on a daily?
I think it's wanting to know, the eagerness, the yearning to see this is where we're struggling and what do we do about that. We speak a lot about, especially in the Methodist Church, reimagining this, reimagining that. But
being imagined.
Yeah, can we act? Can we act? I genuinely think if we can want to know.
Yes.
I think there's so much information out there for us to take. Like, there's one thing I used to do is attend different churches and see what's attracting the youth to that church. If we can also want to know, want to learn. There's so much beauty in learning. Learning is amazing. And we should always you can't know enough. There's always something to know. And I think the faith community should not want to be a stagnant one, but a growing one. And if we're growing, it's always being able to take in new information and not only take it in, but how do we apply it? Because I can take something that works for you, but how does that look in my context? And also being aware of my context. I can't bring whatever it is that you do with your kids to my kids. Because I need to know them. So I think if one thing we can really invest in as the faith community is being aware of where my strengths are and where I lack, and what can hold up where the lack is. How are my strengths able to make up for my weaknesses? And to work together. I think we really need to revisit the concept of community.
True.
We are so to ourselves that we forget we are called to be one in community with Christ. And if we can't attend to being a body, the body of Christ, then we're taking away from what being of Christ and with Christ means. So the whole idea of attaining holistic wellness as a faith community is being invested in one another. Am I able to care for you? If I can see today that, oh my goodness, I don't think Elvis is okay. That's a good thing. It means that I'm aware of the people around me, and I know when to fill in for them. I know when to speak for them. But in a community where people are not together, but are more segregated and separated, it's difficult to attain that. And I don't think sometimes it's because we are not aware of ourselves and what we bring, what is expected of us, and how we can relay those responsibilities. Sometimes you have one person carrying so many responsibilities when there's an entire community of people that could genuinely help. You get people that come from different disciplines in life, and they don't know how to make use of it in the ministry, and there's so much room for them in the ministry. Like, what skills do you bring? And if we can all if we all able to identify those little things from different people, it makes a church because we do it together. It's not expected that Elvis. I know Elvis can do it, but how about,
can I ask someone else to do it?
You're not going to carry the entire church on your own. So for us to be able to attain that as a church, we need to understand what it means to be a church. A church is not Sunday only. A church is not a building, like we always say. It's the people and how they are in relationship with one another.
Even if you were to look at the concept of the church and say it's a building, okay, yes, it is a building, but what makes the building?
Exactly.
If you look at what the building has, the bricks, the cement, the wooden ceiling and everything. So like the glass, people are just the same as well. If you're looking at the church as a body, it's just the different entities of the body coming together.
You can be the arm, I can be the foot. It all goes in, like I said, acknowledging and recognizing what your strengths are and how we can all bring whatever skills and talents that the Lord has attributed to us into this beautiful ministry that we want to attain.
Do you go for therapy?
Do I go for therapy? Yes, I do.
Okay. And how's that journey? Would you advise a minister or?
Oh yes, I would.
Yeah.
I've spoken with a lot of ministers and especially in the Methodist Church, especially when they're starting as probational ministers. It's a very sensitive season for them.
Yes.
And I think that's when they mostly need to be attended to. You're introduced into this world of ministry. And there's so much that is expected of you that you're still learning. And people won't give you time to learn. They expect you to know immediately. And they get burnouts. You just started and you get a burnout because of that. And they don't really have support. And they're still trying to figure out how to practice self-care in their ministry. An older minister is able to say, oh no,
yes,
I know my way around it.
Yes.
But you just got in there, you're still trying to navigate it.
But
You're still trying to navigate it, and therefore you need somebody to help you nurture yourself and foster whatever it is that you're wanting to become or working towards. But I do go to therapy. And how has it helped me? I think in understanding myself. When you go into a field where you expected to be in relation with others, it's very good that you know who you are and to understand yourself. I think the other time I did a personality test, and I couldn't understand how that was able to just make sense and make meaning of what I was feeling and why I'm feeling that way, and how I could help myself, to do better and work towards, a greater holistic well-being for myself. But I think if there's one thing it has helped me with is understanding myself and how I can relate to other people. I know there's certain aspects that I fail in, right?
Yes.
But I'm put in a discipline that I'm forced to, work better and work on them. So learning yourself and knowing, okay, if I fall short here, this is what I can do. But it's learning yourself and seeing space for growth.
Okay.
It allows you to not be stagnant and
Yeah.
grow as an individual and relate to others. Especially in relationships. Relationships bring expectations. You have different people expecting something from you. And how do I navigate those expectations? Am I able to meet those expectations? Am I able to say and accept when I cannot?
Yes.
And do I feel shame or guilt when I cannot? And why is that? Like, you start asking yourself questions and start trying to understand why you feel certain ways and how you can navigate certain situations without taking offense in them. So yeah, for me it has really helped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And are you thinking of writing a book?
Am I thinking of writing a book?
Because there's a lot that we could learn. Especially from young minds. I've got this thing of, I think a lot of young people would be able to kind of articulate some things in a better way.
A book, no. I could write a few articles, but not a book. And I think, like, now that you're saying that, like, life is, we learn people through their narratives. We understand better when people tell us about their narratives.
Yes.
So the way we connect is through narratives. And I think that's another way people build community, is through their narratives. If I have a narrative that I can share with you and you relate, and it somehow helps you, we build a community based off that. But to say I could write a book, no. But maybe articles, because I do like writing. I do like doing some research.
Okay.
So,
do you think as Africans we will ever get to a point where we do accept that there is mental health issues in our society?
Yeah, we could. I think I can take this from my family, right? Before that, they didn't understand it. But I think we also need to realize people respond the way they know best.
Yeah.
And for them, they know the way they know best is to shove things under the rug. We don't talk about things. If I come from a background where nothing is spoken of, we just go about life like nothing happened. That's how I'm going to go in life. My relationships with people are going to be very passive because that's what I grew up knowing. So for me, what I did was sit my parents down and little by little have conversations with them. Ask them about themselves, because if I know about you, as children, you often want parents to understand where we're coming from, but we also need to understand where they're coming from. They don't come from an era where there was so much privilege like we do now. And for them back then, it was so hard, and they don't know how to speak about emotions. And sometimes they generally don't know what they're feeling. They don't know how to articulate their emotions. They don't know how to separate emotions from feeling, So trying to see what their understanding is about those little things and how that builds who they are, their character. But yeah, it's the little ways that you go about introducing conversations around mental health, especially in the Black community. You need to be very sensitive, because I'd like to believe I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. I was like, Black people experience life from a point of trauma response.
Ooh, okay.
They in the fight or flight mode constantly. They've never had to sit down and say, I'm not okay. They don't have time for that. They were not taught to attend to their feelings. You're always
putting your guard up,
all the time. So for them, it's very sensitive. And for somebody to grow up like that till their late age, we need to be aware it's not something that's going to happen overnight. This person has known this for so long. And we are fortunate enough that we have resources, and we're given platforms, and we're trying to break down the stigma around mental health. I, for one, even with the resources that I have, it took me quite some time to be able to speak about mental health. because of the stigma. Like our conscience will always be there.
Yes.
You have that thing at the back of your head saying, oh no, maybe not. People are going to think you're weird. Don't do that, you know?
Yes.
It happens. So if you as a person who has all these resources and are given some sort of comfort to speak about that, you encouraged to be vulnerable. Imagine somebody who's never had that.
Yeah.
And at the very end, they're now expected to act a certain way. So I think one thing we need to learn is compassion and grace in how we interact with the older generation.
Yes.
Because like I said, they're working from a point of trauma response. What they know is to put their guard up.
Comrade Kada,
exactly. Yeah, you know, it's like somebody dealing with PTSD, like genuinely.
Yes.
They just know to act. They don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
So we need to be patient. Just like a child, we are tending to their inner child. You know, how we speak about inner child. We are tending to their inner child and saying, you went through this. To acknowledge them, I'm so sorry you went through this. But having those little conversations within our own little circles, I think it gives gateway to say they can feel seen. Because parenting is hard. I'm not a parent, but I can see.
Yeah.
And I'd like, you know, and it's draining because they can't come to the child and say, oh, you know, I'm not feeling okay. They expect you to always be okay. But to create the space within your household or your environment to say, I can see you're not okay. You know, do you want me to make you tea? And you start having like building relationships. Like we said, people don't sit and talk anymore in the households.
Yeah.
Everybody's in their rooms. We do that, but
we only talk on podcasts.
Yeah, we only talk on podcasts. But creating a safe space for the older generation.
Okay.
I think it's very necessary. They're still navigating mental health. But I think if we could just be patient and be graceful and compassionate, because I'd like to believe they've gone through a lot of stuff. They've never had to speak about it. They would never got the opportunity to speak about it. So I think grace, what we lack as people is grace. Grace is afforded to me and that's great. But when I have to extend it, it's like when we say grace, I later learned that when we say grace at the end of the service, we say it opening our eyes, and we hold our hands up.
Yes.
It's accepting that grace that comes from God, but being able to say, I'm not closing it to myself. I'm sharing it, you know. I'm looking at the grace, you know, this grace that I have, I extend it to you, and actually living that out, not only by saying it, but actually living it out and being able to give and extend grace to others. Sure.
Okay. And just to maybe land this plane, what would your last words be to the church, to the ministers, just about in and around mental health and mental wellness?
I think if we speak and, you know, praise and pray to a compassionate God, we speak about healing.
Yes.
We should be able to understand how that looks like for us. And it's different for everyone, like I said. It's different for everyone, but if everybody could sit and say, and be honest with themselves. You know, sometimes you don't have to be honest with Elvis, but like if you're honest with yourself and say, this is where I'm struggling. Allow God to heal you. And sometimes God heals through other people. We need to accept that. You know, just as God works through us to teach the children, God works through ministers to minister and teach the congregation. God works through other people, and you should be able to receive that. I think ministers get hung up on attending, but never receiving. And when it's time to receive, they feel some sort of weakness from their side. You know, but there's a space for healing at the feet of God.
Ooh.
There's a space for it's okay.
Preach.
Oh, oh well, but there is a space, and I think if we can see that for ourselves, not only for the other people. It's easy to preach and talk about it for other people, but are we able to say that about ourselves? I always say, if today, not today, but this year, my biggest thing was learning to see myself the way God sees me. Sometimes I'm in so much doubt, but there's this God that loves me so much, irrespective of whatever it is that happens. If we can all understand that there's a way that God sees you, and God wants better for you, you're able to receive more. If you perceive yourself from the lens that God perceives you. Sometimes it takes time, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's a process. But the first thing is allowing yourself to be healed and wanting to be healed. But yeah,
I think that's a great philosophy. I want to see myself the way God sees me. Yeah. Hello. There's a little one right there.
Yeah, she's very excited. Love that for her.
Yeah. So just to close it off. Wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining us. As you can see, our picture quality is on point. Ooh, you know what I'm saying?
Love that.
Yeah, it's on point. We're looking good. Looking fresh.
It's a new year, new upgrade,
Yeah. And I'd like to just pay my bills. If you want something like this for yourself, please do contact me or contact Spoodex, the CEO. That's producer in the making. Not in the making, but extraordinary. That's my main man, Spoodex. Thanks, man. And Quiet Conversations with L. Jackson Pasteur. We out. Thank you to OBee. Peace.